And May video for, well, this is random. This is religion, science, education, sociology, and art. So I'll start with science. Science related, I guess. Here's The Death of Psychiatry. A little pocket paperback. I like these little ones. Little ones you can put in your pocket. E. Fuller Torrey, MD. This is printed in 74, 75. Let me give you the premise here. This is a good one. This is spot on, even though it was written in the 70s. This is spot on, I think, for some of the problems today. This was a good find, I remember now. The author maintains that most of the so-called mentally ill are suffering from problems in social adaptation, not from diseases of the mind. Upholding his contentions with numerous case histories, he proposes that the few patients with real brain dysfunction be given back to neurology, and that the others be taught to handle their difficulties through a new system of education and social support. Fascinating, because you could consider the same thing for homosexuality, that it's not a disease of the mind that people initially thought. Right? At one point it was actually considered a disorder. He actually says that no, it is a problem of social adaptation. That's perfectly right. The culture has to change to accept different sexualities, right? So this is fantastic. He's probably not very liked by his colleagues if he still practices, if he's still alive. So I think that'll be a good one. That's a good one to put with the mental illness stuff I have. The other books I have on the topic. Okay, here's I don't have a lot of stuff on Dawkins, but here's a one. Richard Dawkins, The Devil's Chaplain. This is actually, I believe this is a book. This is like a whole bunch of essays, a whole bunch of little opinions on different things. The subtitle is Reflections on Hope, Lies, Science, and Love, printed in 0304. And you may sometimes look in the cover of the books where the copyright stuff is. Sometimes it'll have what the book is, the genre, or not the genre, but the type of the book. It'll have like a little number 1, and then, for example, this book says Evolution, Biology, number 2, Science, Philosophy, number 3, Religion and Science. You can sometimes gauge what the book, the kind of writing that's going to be in the book, like what it's really, what kind of subjects it uses. And I wonder how they construct that. Do they read the book? They must read the book. Do they put the book through like a textual analysis in a computer, and the computer decides, given a certain number of words used frequently, the book is a science book or something? I wonder how they do that. But anyways, this is a whole bunch of just essays on different things. Postmodernism's in here. Darwin, of course. A bunch of random stuff. But it's Dawkins. I'd like to have more Dawkins. I do have his God Delusion, finally found it. But I'd really like to find The Blind Watchmaker and his other stuff too. There's another one, Selfish Gene, would be nice. I read a little bit of it a long time ago, but I don't really remember anything about it. I like more Dawkins, though. I'd like to find some more. Okay, here's a $1.50 book called The Red Hot Lies: How Global Warming Alarmists Use Threats, Fraud, and Deception to Keep You Misinformed. This is by Christopher C. Horner, printed in 2008. So, yes, global warming is out there, and I'm just kind of curious what people who are very against the science, what they have to say about it, to gauge my own opinion. For me right now, I'm very much on the fence because there's so much politics involved with global warming. I don't believe it really hurts the reputation of those who accept that global warming is a problem for humanity. Very few people disagree that global warming is occurring. I think really I think that's kind of passé. Really now the argument is there are some who are apocalyptic soothsayers, deathsayers, doomsayers. They believe that the world's going to end unless we do something, right? There's those people. And then there are those who, if you actually go and look at the stuff, Al Gore and etc., there are people who give time limits and say, if you don't do something, if you don't cut 50% of the carbon emissions on the world in 30 years, then we're going to be past some breaking point, and then the world will heat up and cook us or something. I don't know, something ridiculous like that. Anyways, I'm kind of curious in what the other side says. The other side, not any less political, that say things like, oh, the alarmists are crazy and whatever, right? They have their own terms. The pro-global warming people, they say, what was that? They had a phrase, deniers, climate deniers. It's hilarious. They come up with these names to kind of like, to shrink people down, to put them in their place, to annihilate discussion, to annihilate opposition and different sides and debate. They come up with these terms. So the pro-global warming people say, you're a climate denier, right? You're just an idiot. You're a denier of the truth. And then the other side says, you're an alarmist. You're a global warming alarmist or a climate alarmist, right? It's funny how these things butt heads and battle each other. Okay, here's another kind of book similar to the purpose of having that one. Here's The Case for Faith. I got this for free. I would normally buy this. A journalist investigates the toughest objections to Christianity by Lee Strobel. This is published in 2000. So just like the other book, I'm curious about the evidence that against global warming. I'm curious about the evidence, the arguments made for faith. I'm not a man of faith, not a not a God-fearing man. I think that's what they used to call it. So I'm curious because this book does exactly what it says it does. It's got here just objections. So, for example, objection 1: since evil and suffering exist, a loving God cannot. And then he talks about it for 40 pages. So I guess that's not the case, or not a contradiction. Since miracles contradict science, they cannot be true. 50 pages on that. So, good. All right. I'll see what they have to say. So, good. I'm glad to have that. Here's another book I found at a library. And it looks like a periodical, but it's not. So it's called God of the Witches by Murray. And it's library bound, it's a library book. God of the Witches by Margaret Alice Murray. Printed in, actually, this book didn't have a printing date. Doesn't have a publishing date, which is annoying. But it does have a stamp of when it was put into the library. And that was in 1934. So this is an old book, but it's in good condition. And it's about witchcraft. And I don't have a book on that. It's a history of witchcraft. The author was, I don't think the author was a D of Literature, Doctorate of Literature, Fellow of University College London. So it is an academic work, which is fine. And it's a history of witchcraft. So that's great. I'm glad to have that. Okay, so next I'll do education. Just 2 books on education, sociology stuff. Here's The Art of Teaching. Here's The Art of Teaching by Gilbert Highet. A little pocket paperback, printed in 1955. I'll just have a look to see if anything interesting about on the back here. Okay, the back is worth reading. This is good. Let me read it. So the book is called The Art of Teaching because I believe that teaching is an art, not a science. So this is the author writing this. It seems to me very dangerous to apply the aims and methods of science to human beings as individuals, although a statistical principle can often be used to explain their behavior in large groups, and a scientific diagnosis of their physical structure is always valuable. But a scientific relationship between human beings is bound to be inadequate and perhaps distorted. Of course, it is necessary for any teacher to be orderly in planning his work and precise in his dealing with facts. But that does not make his teaching scientific. Teaching involves emotions, which cannot be systematically appraised and employed, and human values, which are quite outside the grasp of science. A scientifically brought up child would be a pitiable monster. A scientific friendship would be as cold as a chess problem. Scientific teaching, even of scientific subjects, will be inadequate as long as both teachers and pupils are human beings. Teaching is not like inducing a chemical reaction. It is much more like painting a picture or making a piece of music, or on a lower level, like planting a garden or writing a friendly letter. You must throw your heart into it. You must realize that it cannot be all done by formulas, or you will spoil your work and your pupils and yourself. So that's interesting. There is certainly contention between psychologists and the other educationists, sometimes they're called. Humanities and science butt heads in education faculties, for sure. Yes, I can certainly agree with that. Okay, here's sociology. So Max Weber, you may know Max Weber, you might not. He does stuff on bureaucracies. This is Essays in Sociology by Gerth and Mills. This is 1958. You know, some people disagree with the premise of sociology, the sociology studies groups and societies, because they often overlook the people in them, but sociology would probably say, well, you oftentimes can ignore the individuals, even though there is no getting around the axiom that individuals act. I think sociologists would say yes, but they would also say that structures direct people's activity into, they direct people's activity, and you can study that. You can study how structures, if the guy's in a prison, if he's in a business, if he's in a government office, how the rules and regulations and expectations on the person's activities, how all those things can be studied. So it gets into, it doesn't really get so much into power and all that, but bureaucracy is a way of organizing people into doing certain things, a certain way of structuring a hierarchy of workers with bosses, and those bosses have bosses and all that. And and also the efficiency and getting rid of, minimizing, minimizing discretion, because discretion is inefficient. But there are some areas where discretion is imperative. For example, this is an interesting little topic. Medical. The more and more you bureaucratize medical, you give less discretion to doctors. Doctors must diagnose, and I guess it comes down to the whole theory whether a computer one day will be able to diagnose a person. Can you operationalize, which means can you put everything into a procedure to diagnose a person, or do you require a human being to do that? Do you require all kinds of information that's very hard to digitize to make a diagnosis, correct diagnosis? It's interesting because that gets at the root of what? Did I get the root of sociology? I don't know. I went off topic, I think. I think that's an interesting point, though, because I think that's what bureaucracies try to do. They try to get rid of discretion, try to operationalize everything. They try to predict with 100% accuracy what a person will do given certain circumstances. I think that's probably pretty much dead on what happens in those places. The question is whether there's a loss of something when you do that. Perhaps an inefficiency is created, maybe. Okay, 2 books on art. So the history of art. I think they're both histories of art. So here's from the Classicists to the Impressionists. Art and Architecture in the 19th Century, Volume 3 of a documentary history of art, selected and edited by Elizabeth Gilmore Holt. This is printed in '66. It's got some little pictures in here. I'm mostly interested in architecture because, you paint a picture, it has purpose, But architecture really has a, I don't know how else to say, I don't know how to say it. It has a, art has a purpose in the world. Usually it's to capture something in some kind of concept or a feeling, to capture it in a still image, to stay there for eternity, right? To capture, sometimes people say capture eternity in an image. And that has a purpose. At the same time, architecture has maybe a practical purpose. You're building a building because it's shelter, it's housing. What elements of design are possible when there are strict limits on what you can design, given weight, given you can't make a house out of paper because it has to, or I don't know, feathers or something, because it has to hold a certain amount of weight. It has to have plumbing in the walls and things like that. So I just think it's interesting in terms of what people do to design the building, what kind of discretion they have to put little columns and whatever on it. And I just think that's neat to study in different periods of time, like the Greeks, for example, the Colosseum and things like that. What are they called? Corinthian columns, and it's interesting. Okay, so that's that one, and one more is Concise History of Modern Painting. This is by Herbert Reed. All kinds of colored pictures, which are kind of nice to look at. 59.64. So another nice book, art book. Maybe I'll find you one to show. And I don't know. Let me see if there's anybody I recognize in here. Vermeer is probably my... I really like Vermeer stuff, but Vermeer is this... Oh, this is Concise History. I'll look in the index, see if Vermeer's in here, because his stuff is great. Very good with light. Vermeer is not in here. That's unfortunate. But how about Picasso? Picasso is in here. Oh no. Oh yeah. Picasso's got tons of stuff. That wouldn't be right. What kind of art history book would not have any Picasso in it? This is terrible art. Picasso is terrible. This is ridiculous. Well, I'll show you it. It's bad. It's pretty bad, though. This is a woman sitting. Her neck is broken. I don't know what that black thing is here on the red shirt. I don't know what the hell. That's crazy. What do you do with that? You look at that and what? I don't know. What do you get out of that? How about I find something that's more rational art? Oh, there's some terrible stuff in here. Oh, here's a great one. Oh, this is wonderful. This should win awards. Isn't that nice? Just amazing. You stare at that and you can solve any world problems that you need to. Okay, now I'll find something that's good. That's a good piece of artwork. Something that's worth sitting in front of and looking at. Something that's very interesting. I'm having difficulties finding one. Some of the stuff in here is okay, but it's not really what I want. Right, I found an okay one, I guess. It's alright. At least it's rationally drawn. At least you can understand what it actually is. So here's a nice piece. People at a beach, I guess. This is George Seurat. An afternoon at Le Grand Jatte, I guess. I don't know. I'll show you though the scream because that's pretty famous, and it's not good art, but it is famous. It's popular. That's better. It's popular to make people insane. It's reduces sanity of the world. I realize I just also reduced sanity in the world, but Oh well. Okay, that's it for education, science, and art.